Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. So today I was going to talk about books that I don't see enough of on Instagram, on BookTube, on TikTok. So my name is Kirsten Michelle. I am a YA fantasy author and general bookworm, book nerd, book dragon, maybe I just define myself as a book now. 100% obviously this is personal, so this is based on the things I've seen and what I haven't seen, and based on the books I love. But hopefully some of these you'll agree with, or I'll introduce you to a book you've not heard of. So I'm going to start out with adults books and then talk about young adult books, because I feel like I have an equal split of both. So starting out, I get why this one is not on BookTube very often, but people talk about their favorite classics all the time, and I feel like I love Dracula. I feel like I see a decent amount of people talking about Dracula, Frankenstein, Jane Austen, the Bronte sisters, even Virginia Woolf. Things I don't see are love for Charles Dickens. Especially Tale of Two Cities. This is going to be a theme every time I talk about classics that I love. I love this book. A Tale of Two Cities is obviously, most people in America that I know of needed to read this in high school. I get why you probably don't like it very much after that. High school ruins books sometimes. But this is a war epic about a love story and espionage, and it is kind of a look at the time period. So it is happening during the French Revolution, but it is really beautifully done. It is one of my favorite love stories, and I feel like it just doesn't get enough love because I feel like most people read it in high school and then never pick it up again. But if you haven't read it since high school, I highly recommend picking it up, reading it as an adult. I promise it is a different experience. Other one I have seen a bit of, but still not very much, and that is The 10,000 Doors of January. I adore this book. I adore this world. And in all honesty, I feel like both Alex's books, so she also did Once and Future Witches, both of them don't get enough love. And this one especially, the world is so beautiful. It is about a girl who discovers she can walk through doors to other worlds. What the heck? And so you get to go to these other worlds, but there is also, it is taking place during like Victorian times, and she is a young woman who's not married and is, you know, too smart for her own good. And so you get that kind of, that subplot along with the love story, along with her trying to discover this mystery of these doors. It is so beautifully put together, and the prose is gorgeous without being like super flowery purple too much. So if you haven't seen this book, if you haven't picked it up, add it. It's amazing. Another one that I had not even heard of until I was at Barnes & Noble, and in the sci-fi section just looking around because I was like, I'm craving sci-fi. I don't read that as much as fantasy, but I wanted to read some sci-fi. And this random woman was just like, grabbed the book off the shelf and was like, this is one of the best books I've read recently. And I grabbed it, I was like, okay, random stranger. But it was by Becky Chambers, who did the Monk and Robot series, which is also one of my top favorite books of all time. Not even like sci-fi, because it's just cozy. I love it. So this is I'm gonna try to get this one. A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This book was just, if you liked Firefly, because I did, my husband and I have a whole argument over that. He does not like Firefly, but I loved Firefly. And this book gave me Firefly vibes, but like cozier and chiller. But it's not cozy. So bad at explaining this, but it is a story about a woman who gets assigned to kind of be a secretary on a spaceship that bores wormholes in space. Cool. So boring job on a really cool mission. And it is about her becoming friends and found family with the spaceship crew and some trouble they get into. So I love it, the relationships, the characters. It's just a really cool other world or universe in terms of like other species and cultures, and yeah, very fun time. And I don't think I have ever seen anyone talk about it, so here I am. If you liked Monk and Robot, different book, but still so beautifully done. She has such a way with creating worlds and characters. Okay, one other one for the adult section that I do not have because I loaned it to a friend because I give my books away every time I like a book a lot. So, Book Eaters. And I know people know about this book. It was on the Goodreads end of the year top 2022 best books. It didn't win, but it was there. So I know people know about this book, but at the same time, I feel like I have never seen anyone talk about it. So here, I want to talk about it. It's amazing. It is about a woman who is a book eater. So there are people in the world, it's our world, but there are people in the world who eat books instead of food. Kind of weird, but whatever. The problem being, there's also a subset of these people who are then born who don't eat books, but eat brains. So that's not great for not being arrested for murder. So they develop a drug, it's meant to stop that, it helps the cravings, but all this stuff happens and they don't have access to the drug all the time, and the main character's running away because it is not a healthy situation with this group of families, which are the book eaters. So it is angry feminist vibes, it is dark, gritty UK vibes. It's just beautiful in terms of the characters. You end up really hating some of them. And she did such, Sunyi, I think is how you say your name, did such a great job of making you hate the characters. And then the world is just very visceral. I felt like I was like there in England while reading it. So I loved it. Don't think it gets talked about enough. It is, I think technically it's under horror. I would consider it more like horror slash fantasy. But yeah, if you're like sensitive to some things, like they eat brains. So trigger warning for brain eating. Take care of yourselves. Okay, so I want to talk then about young adult YA books. So the first one I'm going to talk about is not this book. This is the fifth book, I think? Sixth book in the series. I don't own the first book. These were published in Australia when I was in middle school, back when it was like nearly impossible to get books from Australia to America without paying $50. They are not published in the United States, but then I only bought the ones I hadn't read, so I own the second half of the series. So yeah, it is Obernewton by Isobel Carmody. This is an epic young adult fantasy slash dystopian before it was cool. But even though it is a dystopian, technically, it feels very fantastical, very fantasy. There's magical animals. There are some amazing powers. Like the magic system in this book, there's like mind powers and how they're able to dive into other people's brains. But I adore this book. My husband, I think, DNF'd the first book still. He tried really hard. And I get why he doesn't like it. It is the first book, especially, I think, was written when she was in high school. I think she edited it when she got a little older, but it isn't the like, oh my god, this is the best written book in the world. But the story, the characters, where she takes the series, I think is worth it. 100% worth every minute in this world. yeah, I just think, and I don't hear it very often, but Oberduten, which I'm going to put on the screen because I feel like I can't spell it to help you look that up. But Oberduten series, I absolutely adore and 100% think more people need to talk about. Okay, another one. This is pretty new, I think. When was this published? 2020. Come on, people. Why is no one talking about this? So this is another Isabel. Isabel Ibanez. It is woven in moonlight. It is duology. Another epic high fantasy, but I think what I love about this is it takes place in, I believe it's Bolivia? A fake Bolivia, not actual Bolivia, because, you know, magic. But it is about pretty much the Incans and the Spanish. So it is, you can see a lot of high fantasy in Europe, obviously, and a lot now in also Eastern Asia in terms of China, Japan, maybe like Middle East and India I think is coming in a little bit now too, but I just don't see very much that takes place in Latin or South America. I obviously am biased because this is also what me and my husband decided to go with our books, but I love this. I think it is unique because of the setting, but then also it's just powerful in terms of the characters. It is a very familiar story, but I love it. It's so unique in the world, in the magic, in how things develop, that I think it is 120% worth hype and needs to get more. Another, this is technically a sci-fi, but The Last Cuentista. So this is another one that I've heard a couple people talk about. I feel like this book needs to be taught in school. Like, I read it and I finished it very quickly. It is middle grade to YA. I thought it was YA, but then it's talked about like it's a middle grade, but it was in the YA section when I bought it, so I don't really know. But The Last Cuentista by Donna Barba Higuera. I love this book. The best way that I can describe this is it gives me Giver vibes. If you've read The Giver, I found out this year apparently my husband hasn't even read The Giver. I thought this was a thing everyone read in school. But if you haven't, A, read The Giver, and then read this. This is a sci-fi book about a girl who is sent with her parents with a bunch of people on a space mission. I believe the planet is pretty much dying or about to die, and so they are sent off to space to get to a new planet, restart civilization, and something goes very wrong with the memory banks and with pretty much the whole mission. And so she is one of the last who remembers everything the way it's supposed to be, hence The Last Cuentista is the last storyteller. So she is the only one who has these memories, and it is about her trying to figure out kind of moving forward. So good. Okay, and then I want to talk about two others that I do not have with me, but the first one is just, it's just stuck with me really hard since I first read it. So that one is The Grace Year. What to say? It is a YA book. It is dystopian. Yeah, I think it's like flat out dystopian, which maybe is one of the reasons it's not talked about as much, because dystopian I know had its time and now it's going away. Although apparently we're having a resurgence. I don't know. So when these girls, I believe it's when they turn 16, they are sent off into the woods for a year, the Grace Year. And for that year, they are allowed to pretty much do anything and everything, because it's a very conservative society otherwise. They're sent out for a year, only girls, only the 16-year-olds, and they're left. And it is about what happens when they get to this place. Maybe one of the reasons this book hit me so much is because one of the antagonists in the story is named Kirsten, and I was listening to the audiobook, and so every time they said her name, I was like, I'm not used to hearing my name very often. It is well written. Once again, it is almost a dystopian horror in how it's written, but I loved it, and it sat with me for a while after I read it, and I still think about it sometimes, and I go like, ooh. So yeah, if that's not your vibe, if you don't like books that make you shiver with like, oh my god, what is happening, maybe don't read it. But otherwise, if that's your vibe, and I know that's some people's vibe, read it, because I thought it was amazing. Oh, and the last one I want to talk about. So, Libba Bray, who wrote A Great and Terrible Beauty, which is also one of my early favorite series. I read it when it first came out when I was in high school. Her newer series, which in all honesty isn't new at this point, The Diviners. Not nearly enough people talk about this book. This book is set in the 1920s. It is a fantasy world, a dark fantasy world mixed with horror elements that takes on eugenics and immigration issues in the 1920s and homophobia and racism and slavery. These books are chonky. Like, it takes on all of those things because there are like, I don't even know how many characters. There's like probably 6, 7, 8 main characters. So it's long. And it's 4 books total. It is done officially. So it is a complete series you can go out and read. Oh my god, though. It is so good. It is darker. It is definitely, when I was reading it as an adult, I was like, I am not sure I would want my like 15-year-old reading this. It's a little bit on the older side for YA, but it is fantastically done. I think it is a slower burn, so I think it is once again a little bit more adult overall. But what it takes on, the stuff that it discusses, where it goes, is just too good. I just don't see enough of it, and I feel like more people need to talk about it. So go to talk about that. So yeah, that is all I have. I'm sure I have more, but for now I will stop talking so y'all can go out and put these reads on your TBRs. So thank you so much. I hope you subscribe if you want more content, and yeah, let me know in the comments if I missed any, or if you've been talking about these books for a while and I just am not following you and haven't seen. I would love to talk to more people who love these books.